welcome to the first Faith United Youth Network, FUYN podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about exams and expectations, and I'm joined here today by Emaan and Tara. So more than ever, we're seeing that there's a lot of pressure on young people to do well in the exam space. And with the A-level results that came out 2 weeks ago, we've seen how much this pressure has manifested in young people, but also how by missing out on grades, people's lives have been absolutely ruined, and their futures don't look as hopeful as they once thought they would. So we're going to dive in today and just talk about that. But before we do, we're going to have a synopsis reading of a blog that was written by Tara for FUYN a few weeks ago. And if you want to read the blog in full, you can do so on our website. So Tara, take it away.
Thanks, Sherrii. Age and success. Why are we so obsessed? Learning about the world through the vastly different life experiences of others is essential. Not only can we build connections this way, but our own worldview is encouraged to stretch when encountering a different way of thinking or way of life that gifts us new concepts and insights. A rigid belief that success is for the young and specific achievements must be reached by a certain age for them to count stifles our flexibility to adapt and sets us up to fail. For every Mozart who wrote his first symphony aged 8, there is a J.R.R. Tolkien who published The Lord of the Rings aged 62. As our life expectancy reaches into the 80s and 90s, what's the rush?
Wow, that's amazing. And I've read the full blog, and I definitely recommend anyone who resonates with your words to just take a quick look at it. And Emaan, what did you think? Did you anything resonate?
I've read the full blog as well, and I definitely think that people should read this and they can, so us lot can relate to it, people our age.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's so really poignant, the point you made about boxing ourselves in at a young age, because even when you choose your GCSEs, or A levels, you're almost saying no to some careers which down the line you might really love or have a great passion for.
Yeah, I can relate to that. One of our teachers, she'd always thought she wanted to do biology, and she had this book and it told you if you do biology, this is the careers you can do. It got to the point where she crossed off everything and became a teacher instead, because she realized it's nothing that she wanted to do. So if we do, like you're saying, we can cut off subjects and be like, oh yeah, but later on we'd want to do them. And also boxing us off at a young age, it's not necessarily we're cutting off a few courses that we won't be able to do because of the GCSEs we pick or the A levels, but it's so hard, because especially if you want to do stuff like medicine and engineering, those A levels, so you have to do for 2 years, and then the degree that you pick is a 5-year degree, and then on top of that, if you actually want to a 5-year degree, you become just an average. If you're going to become a doctor, that's a doctor, but then if you want to be better, you have to specialize, and after specializing, after becoming a doctor, you have to spend once every year you have to do an exam to show that you're still worthy, you still know that you know everything, how to do it. So studying never finishes at anything, so to box us off at such a young age, it's not good.
Yeah, totally. I think it's such a commitment, and whilst that commitment is needed and it's really good, I think you can often get a bit trapped with it and feel like there's no way out when there is. And it's more than okay to make a few choices about your career and what you want and what you don't want. So I think it's really important to remember that, and thank you for writing that, Tara. It really is a good piece. So let's get straight into it. So let's talk about the exams. So I think let's just begin at the beginning. There is so much pressure on students today. It's unbelievable, and we often hear the saying that your grades don't define you. And I completely agree with that. But I think in the moment when you've worked so hard for a set of grades, to hear those words, there's almost a lack of comfort from them. And yeah, let's maybe just talk about what are the pressures that young people are facing today in order to get into uni and to have that dream career that they want.
So the pressures that we're all facing are you need a certain amount of grades, and so say if I lived in more of it depends. So for uni, or I'll pick medicine because that's what I know best of, you need an AAB or it depends what school you go to. If you go to a public school, you do AAB. If you go to a private school, it's AAB, but for like a public school, the grades are lower. And then like the university also looks at what environment you live in. So say if you live in a bad area, they lower the grades even more. And then they look at your parents' financial states and lower the grades even more, which is fair, but then it's also not fair. It could be someone who goes to private school has more privileges, but us lot that go to public schools, it's harder, but then there's like less pressure because of the universities that do this, but then there's pressure from parents and there's pressure from the community and everything. So me coming from an Asian background, it's so much harder. Like my parents are quite they used to be chill, because they didn't really know much about like GCSEs and stuff, because they moved from Pakistan, so they moved here and didn't know much. So they were just like, oh, you need to do good in school. And then later on, because of my granddad being a doctor, they're just like, oh, do medicine, but they didn't know how hard and how challenging it is. So they thought it was like easier and everything to just pick medicine, to do science and just go on with it. Later on down the line, after my mum like talks around, I go around like asking, you realise like it's a lot more pressure. And especially from an Asian background, everyone likes to talk about other people in the sense that like, oh, did you see this daughter's grades? She got like one higher, or like this person got one lower. And from there, but your parents might not care, but like hearing it and other people speaking about it, it makes them think, oh wait, but why did this happen? Even though they be like fine about it.
Yeah, definitely.
That's where like the pressure builds, and they'll be like, well, your friend got higher, so why couldn't you? What stopped you from getting higher? Is it because you've been going out a lot? Is it because you've been watching movies? Or it's just they try to find like something that person doesn't do that I do, so then like to build on the pressure.
And that is a lot of, I think when you have a lot of comparison, I don't know what you think about this, Tara, but when there's a lot of comparison, I think it can take a toll on you as well, because you probably start doing it yourself without realizing like, oh, why did they get higher? Or like, what do I need to do? And I don't think that's always kind to your mind when you have to constantly compare yourself or be judged by other people's standards.
Definitely, because some people might be intellectually like more intellectual than me or other people, so it's not fair to be like, oh well, she got higher.
Tara, do you think there's anything else you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, because everyone's always going to have different strengths. So comparing different people just because they're of the same age or in the same year group at school is completely arbitrary. Like I know for me, I have two older sisters and they were both really high achievers, but I'm dyslexic. So for me, it always felt like being compared against them was a bit of an unlevel playing field. So I can definitely see how that is an added pressure.
Yeah, definitely. And I think what you wrote about in your blog as well, like I think at a young age, like why is it that if you do something young, it's more commendable than when you do something when you're a bit older, or you have to be better when you're older? Like, because yes, we can go off age, but I think maturity levels and influences and what you have access to also plays a huge part in your success.
Also, do you know how you're like comparing? Like someone could be better, and then you think to yourself and you're like, oh well, like I was saying, am I not good enough? And then sometimes you're like, oh well, I put in my all, and if it's not good enough, then like where do we go from here? And then you start like judging yourself and you start putting yourself down, and like that can lead to bad things. And you're just like, especially a few people that I do know, they'll just like, it got to the point where like they were like, well, if we're putting our all in and we're not getting the grades, then like what's the point? I'll just move on, do something else. Whereas they could have, but like we need to be like, hey, you did good, keep on going, like you can do better. But like how our parents sometimes, especially from the Bound background, they'd be like, oh well, it's not good enough, you need to like improve yourself. We just need like positive feedback and positive reinforcement to maybe help us, and then maybe next time we can get better grades, because we've been like, oh yeah, that was nice, that was good, but like try get better, but like we know you tried. Like just a bit of like a pat on the back, that helps.
I agree. And like we are judging people by like A, B, C, D. Like I think there are so many things that are unmeasurable that we're not judging people by either. And like it's so important to remember, like just because you got a B in something, it does not mean you're bad at it. Do you know what I mean? It just means in that exam, maybe not everything went right for you that day. Maybe the question that you were hoping that came up didn't come up. That does not mean you are not good at maths or that you will not have a nice career in that. So I think it's so hard because everything you do is judged in one exam in one moment. How can you judge a lifetime of work? How can you judge all those things you're going on at home with, or whatever's happening to you in your personal life in one exam? It's sometimes it can feel almost cruel, I think.
Like, I can personally relate to that. I've always been good at English language and English literature, and I've always got like the best, so like I've always got an A. Sometimes if I slip up I used to get a B, but during my GCSE exam what happened is I looked at the wrong booklet, and I did such a good answer on the first two questions, and then I realised, oh wait, that's not what it's asking me, it was a different story. So obviously my time was gone, so I tried to just like do the best I could, but because I messed up and it was my English language, I got a 4, which I've never got in my life. But like resitting it would have took time, it would have like distracted me from my actual A level. So I was like, well, unis are fine with a 4, so we'll just go with that. But like on the day you don't know like what's going to happen to you, obviously because of stress, because you're thinking, oh like, oh it's my exam, everything, so you're not going to like be looking down, like sometimes you'll get distracted or whatever. So like how 3 years of work is based on one day, one exam, 2 hours, it just doesn't make sense.
It doesn't.
It's not fair.
It's not fair, and it's really hard because I think everyone always asks the question, well, what's the solution? And
Yeah.
it's very hard to tell anyone what the solution is, but I think all these points are like extremely valid. And I think another part to explore as well is with exams or with expectations, it is so much more beyond what you're doing in school. What you do outside of school plays a part. Like, I think me and Tara both know that when we were doing UCAS and we were applying to uni, like they always wanted to talk about what are the extra things you've done. Like, yes,
Yeah.
you get A's or B's, but what else have you done? And that is so hard. Like, you almost don't have enough time for like self-care, I think, when you're young, even when you're older, but a lot when you're young.
Yeah, that's true. And kind of like, so one of well, I've got like loads of examples for this, but there's certain people when they come to a revision, when it comes to school, it's just school, 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 nothing else. Like maybe they'll have like an hour break, but that's it. They're just going to be revising, head down and everything. But then when they get to unis will ask, oh well, what was your extracurricular? And they'll be like, oh, like I didn't have time for that. But it's just like handling your time properly. So like I was saying, for GCSEs, I was revising for my GCSEs, and then we found out about this youth club that had been made because of someone in our community got stabbed. So people were inspired to open up a place to keep the youngsters in and less crime on the streets. So I was like, oh, we'll help out. So we did, but I spent like 2 hours there every week. It got to about 3 to 4 hours a week where my mum was like, wait, hold on a minute, like you might want to like slow down and just do a few hours, because obviously my mum cared about me being more in school. But then she found out like, oh wait, you know, if you've got AAAs, like that doesn't matter. You need to have extra curriculums, because like you could be an A-star student but you won't have social skills, you won't be able to work in a team. So you like that's what you have to do in uni. That's as a doctor, you're gonna have to be able to socialize with your patients and stuff. So you need the extra curriculum. So then when I told my mum about this, when others told my mum, they're like, oh, so you need to let her go to these places, you need to let her socialise, she needs to get as many things as she can. So I started youth club, I opened my own girls youth club, I've done so many things in youth, and it's just adding on and adding on. So I was like to the youth club manager, I was like, oh well, I need a reference now, like it's time, I need to put it on my uni application. And they were like, oh, we need to plan a date to sit down because I've done so many things, we need to get a list and everything. Over the past 2 years I've used my time wisely, I've spoken to the mayor, I've gone to the police chief office, everything. So I've done everything, but I've also like done my revision, I've also studied in school. So it's like managing your time. And it's true, self-care is just out of the window sometimes, because you just want to sit down, you just want to relax and have time to yourself. But when it comes to especially GCSE and A-level years, I feel like self-care is just not the option.
Yeah, it's not prioritized, and you feel like, I think it's very hard in the moment to be like, do I want to take self-care or do I want to get into my dream uni? Like, it's very hard in the moment to choose self-care, even though in the long run your health is everything, and without it there'll be so many things in a way you can't do. And yeah, I think that's so, yeah, it's so important. There's just a lot of pressure, I think, on young people,
because there's like I was saying, managing time, but there's also there's like a certain amount of time you have, so there's only so much you can do within a day, within a week. So like self-care, but I've always been the one, because if I don't feel good like if me inside does not feel good, then I can't like be as good as I am during youth and anything like that. So like I have to feel good, so I'll take a couple of hours out, like just self-care and everything, and then just have like a nice little pamper session or anything, or just watch a movie, get with my friends or anything, and then just do my work.
What about you, Tara? How do you self-care? Is there like, do you have like anything to do to wind down?
I think for me, like, I think I'm probably naturally quite lazy, but like things like yoga, obviously pre-COVID swimming was a really big thing for me, but just things that you can't really do whilst thinking about like your day-to-day life. I found that really helpful, and just doing something a little bit physical was really helpful for me.
Yeah, I think definitely like in order to wind down the mind, physical activity can always be really, really helpful and useful. So I think it's really good. Like I think stuff like youth clubs as well, where youth have a chance to play sport together, be a bit social. It's lovely ways.
Yeah, so like I can relate to that, because like the gym is the best when you're feeling stressed or anything, best place to go. Even if you spend like 15 minutes on a treadmill, that's fine. When you come out of the gym, you feel so relaxed. It's just, I don't know why I feel like this, and a few of my friends feel like this. Other people like, no, that's stressful, going to the gym, this, that. So many people like, oh no, like it's anxiety builds up and whatnot. Fairs, I get you, but me going to the gym helps me so much. I come out so relaxed and everything. And also like the youth club, so we always tried once every other week or once every week we'd have, because we had the parking to ourselves, so when the parking was free we'd play football or maybe like badminton or something to get the kids like energized. And when it was raining outside, we'd come inside and we'd play like, what was it called, frisbee, because we had like a big room, so we could like play frisbee and then like not anything be damaged, and just like a bit of physical activity to like get you pumped and ready.
No, that sounds really good. No, I think this takes us nicely into our little second question of the podcast, and sort of talking about when the pandemic hit and you were in A levels and you found out that like your exams are going to be awarded through this algorithm that how did that feel? Because I think I've heard so many different opinions on this. Like some people say, well, I felt relieved I didn't have to do my exams. And other people said, well, I felt like I'd worked so hard to get my shot and then it just got taken away from me. And then some people said that it was one of those things that if you then got the grades that you wanted, your parents was likely to say, well, you didn't really get them. You got them because of the algorithm. And then if you didn't get the grade you wanted, your parents were going to say, see, you couldn't even get the grade you wanted, or the community or whoever is the person judging you. So what was the kind of response to hearing this?
So I personally wasn't going to get my grades this year. It was my best friend, because she's a year older than me, and my younger sister who's going to get her GCSE grades. So at first she was kind of relieved, because she was like, oh, my predicted grades were so good, like it's fine, I'm going to get them. And my friend, she was like, oh well, because she went to a grammar school and everything, so she was like, oh well, our statistics are better than other people, so hopefully it's going to be okay. But she was a bit worried, like, what if I don't get the grades, because she wanted to do medicine, so she'd have to take a gap year, and all of that stress was going through her mind. And I was thinking, well, if this was me, if like I had to get my grades because of an algorithm, I don't know how I would react, because like it depends on like the algorithm like was going to check, oh, your like classwork and stuff, like it's going to put everything together and then produce grades, and it depends like throughout the year how you were and everything. So like it's a bit of like a sticky situation. But you're right, like if you got the grades that you wanted, I feel like if my parents if I got grades like A, B or whatever, they'd be like, oh well, at least you got the grades, even like if you didn't try, at least you got the grades so you can move further. And if we didn't get the grades, I'm like, oh well, yeah, like you said, like, well, you couldn't even get the grades that you wanted. But what happened was, when the A-level results came out first, and they were because of the algorithm, my friend did not get into any other places that she wanted to, even though she's a straight A student. But because the government put it 2 grades down, so what happened was, because the algorithm apparently gave 2 good results, so the government schooling system decided to put 2 grades down to the actual algorithm grades. So she ended up getting A, B and C, which didn't allow her to get into any unis or anything. And so obviously now she's like, oh well, what do I do? Because it's not fair at all if you're gonna get if you have such good grades, and how are you gonna get a C? You've never got a C before, so why would you get a C now? So obviously she was like stressed, crying, everything. It got to a point where her dad and her mum were on the phones to unis, and what unis were doing were like, you'd make you wait in a line and then cut off the call and just be like, yeah, you'd have to call back. And she finally got a place in Westminster to do medical sciences, but like that's not her first option, that's not what she wanted to do, but she thought it's better than wasting a whole year to just go in, because medicine's already like, the degree is like so long and everything. But then because of this whole situation, the government decided, oh well, we're just going to give you your predicted grades and not do the algorithm thing anymore for GCSEs. And that's how it went for A levels. So 2 days later on, A level people actually got their predicted grades, which were much more accurate, they were a lot better. And my sister got her predicted grades, which let her get into all the places that she wanted to go, allowed her to do all the subjects, which was so much better. But then again, it's also like, what if you didn't do good when you did these exams, like because you thought, oh, they're the marks, it's fine, I'll do better when I'll do my summer exams, I'm just going to try harder. So what if you didn't do good, then your predicted grades weren't going to be as good. So like, that's where it's like, it's just like, it's like a scale, like maybe not, it's just a bit of a weird one.
It is, and that's so friend who, like you said, like never got a C in her life, and then on the most important result, or one of the most important results you might get, gets a C. That is really, it must be so hard to digest that, and it must be a lot of stress. And I think it's so unfair, because I think uni anyways it's tough. I mean, when you uni, yes, it's a lot of fun, you look forward to it, but it's definitely tough. So to think, it's a bit of an injustice. I think it's a really hard one.
Also, what the government did was they were like, okay, so in this, say if we were in a class of 30, they'd say, okay, so only 2 people are allowed an A, a couple are allowed a B, the rest are C's. And if you were to appeal, so say my friend appealed because she got a C, if she got a B, the person who got a B before would have to get a C. So that's how this was working. And so my friend, my cousin, got a distinction in her business A level, but one of her friends got a merit, even though she's never got a merit before. She appealed. She was like, well, this is not right. And she got a distinction, but someone else in the class then had to get a merit, because they'd done like, oh, certain people, like this certain amount is allowed this many grades and this one, like that's how it was. And that's just extremely not fair, because what if someone who got B's throughout their whole life tried really hard and ended up getting an A?
Yeah, it is. So what did you make of it, Tara, when you heard the news?
I think it was just so tough, because I know that if I'd got my predicted grades for the subject that I ended up doing at uni wouldn't have allowed me to get into my uni, and I outperformed my predicted grades by quite a long way. Because I think, like you were saying, that, you know, mocks and things, like people don't necessarily get it together for your mocks, but when they know it's the real exam, that can be obviously really motivating for people. So yeah, I just think it was so tough. Like I felt like it was just, this year has obviously been so difficult for so many different people, but for young people, when you feel like you've worked so hard for all these years in school and you're really aiming for something by that stage, to have that kind of messed with is really difficult.
Yeah, it's kind of just one thing after another for you guys. Like, you're in a global pandemic, you're already in a year that's stressful enough as it is. Like, it's so stressful. Like, I'm a master's level right now, and I still think A levels was the most stressful. And I still remember not sleeping the night before, because I was so imminent that I had to get into this university, and, you know, all this pressure. Which, it's funny, because I got into the university I wanted to, and my friend didn't, and that never stopped either of us from achieving any goals. You know, so grades don't define you, but in the moment and in that time, it is so hard to see otherwise. And fair enough, you've worked so hard for it. So to have all these things thrown at you guys at such a young age, I don't know, maybe the positive is you guys will become extremely resilient from these experiences, but it is really, really tough for young people. And I would hire anyone who managed to do their A levels in a pandemic if I ever get to hire people, because it looks so hard. And I think that's the last question we have for today. Like, what is the future? Like, how do you and your friends see the future? Are you hopeful? Are you like disheartened? Like, is it mixed emotions? Like, what does the future look like for you guys?
The future, well, it's really blurry, because like I was saying, now I'm going into year 13. Right now I would have had my predicted grades in my hands applying for unis, but because we didn't do exams in the summer, I have nothing. So we don't know how we're going to apply for unis, like to do our personal statement. We would have all started that by now, but because we didn't have school, we didn't have the summer, we didn't have exams or anything, so now nobody knows like how we're going to apply for uni. We needed placements to write down on our personal statements, like, or if you were to work in medicine, you needed a placement somewhere to therefore like it's like a better option than just working in like a fish and chip shop. So then they'd be like, oh well, you've not done this, but like we don't know what to do now because of this pandemic. We've missed out on so many things that it's like harder for us. And like I was saying, for UCAT mainly used to be like, do you know, like writing down like piece of paper, you'd go to the thing, you had an option to do it online, but you can go and like do it on the thing on the screen. And I just find that so much more to do it at home in my bedroom, or like to do it in my house, like to do the UCAT. I just feel like I won't concentrate as much as if I was in a school environment or like an exam environment, because I'm in my comfort area. Like I don't feel like I'll perform my best. Like it's harder because like you don't know, like because of the pandemic, you don't know how you're going to be in the future. And also like for school, before we'd know how to revise, we'd know how to learn, like come back, oh yeah, we need to go through today what the teacher said, these notes. But like I genuinely feel like I've forgotten how to like revise or how to do as good as I would have done if the pandemic wasn't here.
And we wish you all the best, and I think you will. You seem like someone who really, you know your stuff, so all the best for you and good luck in whatever path you end up taking. And what about words of advice, Tara? Do you have any words of advice to anyone going into year 13 or starting uni?
Oh, that's a tough one. I think what I would say, and maybe what I think I would have liked to have heard, and obviously my situation was a lot easier because there was no pandemic for my year, but it feels like all of this is the absolute kind of center of your world, and your life will be completely ruined if you don't kind of hit these markers. But in reality, you know, I have friends that did degrees that they never use and that they never touch, and you know, they had a great experience, but their subject meant kind of nothing in terms of what they ended up doing in terms of jobs. I have friends that didn't go to uni who are really successful, you know, doing really interesting different stuff. So I just think if you can have a little bit of kind of perspective and come away from it a little bit sometimes and think, you know, I'm going to do my best and my best will be good enough, because I think whatever ends up happening, you will be a really resilient year group. So yeah, I think just reiterating what Sherrii said, I think you'll all do really well because you are far more resilient than my year group ever was.
That's like what you said, it's like nice, but do you know how you're like, oh, I'm going to do my best and that's like going to be the best. I can say that to myself, but then there's parents, there's my family, there's the community, there's other people. There's always going to be those people that compare you, and I feel like that just makes it harder. Other people need to put themselves in your spot and realise like you just need to back off a bit, because it genuinely does make it harder. But yeah, I feel like we are going to be like really resilient.
You are. And I think when people have that judgment, it would be nice for anyone who listens to this podcast or who thinks that they know someone who's ever had a bit of judgment, like to remind themselves that it's just judgment and it can be there, but what you think of yourself is the most important thing. And if we ever have judged other people, to remind ourselves that we have no idea what people are going through, even without a pandemic. Judging people's grades or judging people through this and that, I think if we could just all be a bit kinder, I think we'd just get further, we'd just be a happier workforce, would be a happier nation without that judgment, because it's so hard when that's always looming over your head. And I know I come from South Asian background, that it has been there before, and I think if it hadn't been so relentless, maybe people would have actually done better or actually pursued their passions. because it can
But
be
it just takes years for people to be like, hey, just calm down a bit. Like, it's fine. And also, your parents are like the main people. So if they don't care about like other people, if they don't care what other people are saying, then everything's going to be fine. But sometimes it depends how much someone says something or to what extent, because it can be that trigger button and be like, oh wait, hold on a second, why is my daughter doing this? Why is she not this and this, that? So,
but yeah, I guess it's about more conversations like this, building up that resilience and realizing that ultimately, as long as you're happy, that's really what the goal of life is, I guess. It's not always about being better or being in this race, you know. Really important. And thank you both for coming today. It was lovely to hear from you both. And Emaan, I know you're going to go on to do great things, so all the best in the future. And yeah, and Tara, thank you for your lovely blog, and we'll definitely hope people will read it and get some inspiration for it. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.